Oh, bear with me. Ugh. I obviously don't cuss on my video or swear or anything else. I'm not going to promise that this evening. I can't. I just can't, and you'll understand why. Okay, so we're going to begin. Right, okay. So as I've said, it is one of the worst stories I've ever done, and it is the baby Brianna Lopez story. Okay, so Brianna Mariah Lopez, she was born on the 14th of Feb 2002, a little Valentine's baby. She was born in, I know I'm not going to pronounce it right, but it's Las Cruces in New Mexico, obviously an American story. I always thought New Mexico was in Mexico, but I don't believe it. I think it's in America, but it's near Texas, I believe. So that's what I found out, because I always thought it was in Mexico, but it's not. Okay. Brianna's parents, you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot of this. And let's just say every time I'm doing this, I'm actually swearing. Okay, Brianna's parents were Stephanie Renee Lopez and Andy Walters. Okay. And like I say, she was born on the 14th of Feb 2002. She had an 18-month-old brother. I think at the time of her birth, he just turned 1, so they were very close in age. Okay, and when they brought her home to a trailer. I've seen pictures of it. It's not mega big. You'll see why I'm making that point as the story goes on. Now, living in this trailer was Stephanie Lopez and Andy Walters, who are Brianna's parents. Her little brother, who was Andy Jr. Yes, Andy Jr. They all lived in one room. The 4 of them did as a family. They lived in one room in the trailer. And at the other end of the trailer was Patricia Walters, which is Andy's mom. So Brianna's dad's mom. So Brianna's grandmother. Robert Walters, who was Andy's brother. Okay. So Brianna's uncle. There's different reports. They say there was another child living there. I'm not too sure. But it was said Patricia's partner was there. Now, so that was 7 living in this trailer. But not long after Brianna was born, Stephanie's twin brother, she's got a twin brother called Stephen Lopez. He moves in. Okay, now he moves into Stephanie's room. So now in Stephanie's room, okay, we have Stephanie, mom, Andy, dad. We have Stephanie's twin brother, Stephen, and then the 2 little ones, which is Andy Jr., who, like I say, only about a year older than Brianna, just over. And Brianna herself. Other end of the trailer is grandmother, her partner, and Andy's brother, Brianna's other uncle. Okay, so there's 8 people living in this trailer. It's not that big. It's really not. Again, you realise why I'm making a point of this. Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, we come up to 10 a.m. On July the 19th, 2002. Now, remember, Brianna was only born on Valentine's Day, 2002. So, there's a 911 call put through, and it's Stephanie. She basically saying, my baby's not breathing, she's fell out of a high chair, I'm not too sure what's happened. And the 911 operators are going through CPR with that, and it said that, although I've seen it on the transcripts, I haven't heard the call itself. If it's out there, I haven't heard it. But even when you read the transcript, she's like, well, she's not breathing. It didn't, even reading it doesn't seem like there's much effort in trying to resuscitate this baby, okay? But she said she fell out of a high chair, and then a bit later on, she said she fell off a bed. She's very confused, even in the phone call, okay? But the paramedics show up, and when they get there, they rush in to little Brianna. Now, at this point, she's 5 months old, okay? So, baby. And they rush her out, take her off to the hospital, try and resuscitate her. The family follow to the hospital, but when they get to the hospital, although they work on her and they try to bring her back, Brianna doesn't come back, and she was declared dead at 11:10 a.m. So just over an hour after the 911 call was made. And this was on on the 19th of July 2002. So Brianna was 153 days old. That's it. And you might think, oh, well, was it an accident? You know, there was all these people living in this trailer. She had so much of a, you know, it wasn't a single mom. It wasn't a young couple living together who, you know, didn't know what to do. There was so many people. She had such a support network. You would think, oh, you know, it must be quite... sorry. It must be quite innocent. You know, it's just an accident. No. It's not that kind of channel. Told you before. So, like I say, Stephanie had originally said Brianna had fell out of the bed. Well, when they were trying to resuscitate Brianna, the paramedics and then the nurses in the hospitals, it's not that they started to notice, they were obvious. There was bruises all on her forehead, all across here. And the more they looked, the more there was on this baby. Now, her cause of death was cranial cerebral injuries, and a subdural, I can never pronounce it, subdural hematoma. Okay. So that was the cause of death. Now, when they were looking at this little baby, they knew straight away it was bad. It was obvious child abuse. So they take him for questioning Stephanie, Stephen, and Andy. So Stephanie the mom, Andy the dad, and Stephen, Stephanie's twin brother. They bring them in for questioning. Alongside, I'm sorry, that should be it now. Alongside grandmother and uncle. Okay. So they're all brought in for questioning. But before they go, they let Stephanie come in to see Brianna to say goodbye. And it said that she walked in to the room where Brianna was lying. And Brianna had like a little blanket on her, but her face was, you know, out in the open. And she walked up and she put the blanket over Brianna's face and just said, I'm sorry. Now, I have heard other stories where it said she held her and was saying sorry. But I tend to believe the first part that I've just said, that she just covered her face, said she was sorry and walked out. I tend to believe that more. You'll see why in a second. Okay, so then there was an autopsy done on Brianna. Okay. Last warning I'm giving everyone. Okay. The autopsy was, she was bruised from head to toe. Do you remember I said she had some bruises on her head? Now, these pictures are online. They are on there. Do I advise you looking? No, I don't, because it's a baby. It's not even... not that it would be any different if it was a toddler or a child, but it's a baby. And there's bruises all on her forehead. Okay, but she was bruised from head to toe, right down to her little toes. There was bite marks all over her. Bite marks all over her. 15 of them. 15 of them. Okay. The bruises are on her forehead, her ears, the back of her head, one on her back, front. Not just bruises, like blood to the top. Like blood bruises. Just horrible, horrible. Bite marks on her little fingers and her little toes. She'd received a blunt force head injury to the back of her head up to 3 days before she died. Okay. She had bleeding on the brain, and bleeding behind an optic nerve. So that would be said she'd been shook violently. She had 2 skull fractures that were 5 to 7 days old, and a previous untreated brain injury. Okay. She had bucket handle fractures on both legs, her thighs, both of them, and a bucket handle fracture on her left arm. And it was said from either being pulled or twisted, yanked. This baby's 5 months old. Okay. She had 2 rib fractures on the right side of her chest. Several weeks prior to her dying. These aren't injuries that just happened. This poor child was abused, it was said, from the minute she came home from the hospital. Okay. There was one picture in the whole trailer, one picture of her, and you can see it. And it's like, you know, when a newborn baby has wings, so she's kind of half smiling and her eyes are not fully open. So you can see it's more wing than a smile, but oh, she's adorable. Such a cute, beautiful little girl. There was no toys in the trailer, which they had an 18-month-old as well. Why was there no toys? Okay. I did notice when I seen the photos, I seen one truck on like I say, they were in one room, so there was a bed. Very small. The one room I'm talking about, very small. There's a double bed. There's a swing that apparently the baby slept in, Brianna slept in. I'm presuming Andy Jr. slept in the bed with them. Stephen slept on the floor. It's a tiny room. It's very cluttered. It's very chaotic looking room. There's like a ceiling fan, which you'll realise why I've said that in a second. So Amy Orlando, which was the district attorney in New Mexico at the time, she was called straight away. Police were involved straight away, obviously, when they're seeing all these injuries. So Stephen, Stephanie and Andy all get brought in, as do the grandmother and the uncle. They all get brought in for questioning. Okay. So what happened? What happened to this child? Like that, and they're all sort of, well, she fell off a bed. I don't know. And to Stephanie, her thing was, what did she? Oh, okay. So here's Stephanie. All right. She claimed that on July the 18th, 2002, so the night before, this is Stephanie's story. Okay. She claimed she had a maximum of 3 beers in the evening and she fell asleep at 10 o'clock. You know what happened? She fell asleep. She kind of woke up about 7 and she seen some marks on Brianna's head, but she asked Andy about it and he was like, oh, you know, it's fine. And she went back to sleep. What? She said that she woke up about 9:45 and Brianna was bruised and unresponsive, and that's when she called 911. She said that when she spoke to Andy, Andy said to her, Stephen threw her up. Stephen threw her up. What does that mean? She didn't elaborate. She just says, oh, well, Andy said Stephen threw her up. Okay. But she explained that she'd seen Andy throwing her up previous to this. And what throwing her up means was throwing her up. You know, like you see dads do. I've got to admit, I never did it. I'd be too nervous. This baby's 5 months old. Let's remember this. And she'd seen Andy throwing her up. And she'd seen that Brianna had hit the ceiling. When I say ceiling, it's a trailer. So these aren't high ceilings. They're quite low. So you wouldn't even need to throw that high. You know there's going to be a problem. And she told him to stop because he was going to hurt Brianna. Okay. But then she said, well, I think she might have banged her head about 3 times when I seen it happen. So I told him to stop. This wasn't the night before. This was way before she said she'd seen this happen. And as for the bite marks, do you want to know who this bitch blamed? She blamed the 18-month-old. She blamed Andy Jr. She says, oh, it was him. He must have bit her. He'd been biting her. That's who she blamed. And it was said that during the autopsy, when they'd measured the bite marks, that there weren't a child's bite mark. And a child couldn't bite that hard, especially at 18 months. They were adult bite marks. Okay? So this is Stephanie's interrogation. Now let's move to Andy. You know Dad. You know Daddy. Andy's interrogation. Okay? So Andy's asked, what did you do the night before? Okay? Because something's happened to this child. Well, explain to me what you did the night before. Now, I will warn you, I missed out a couple of things in the list I gave you from the autopsy. Okay? And I'm going to explain it to you now. Andy said he'd finished work at 5 p.m. the night before. Got back about 6 or whatever. I was shocked to hear he worked. Sorry, I was just shocked that he'd worked. I don't know what it was. Anyway, he got back about 6 o'clock. And then he went out to pick up Stephenie's brother, from work. And they, this was about 8 o'clock. And they stopped off on the way back to get a crate of beer. Okay. So when they got home, remember Stephanie said she'd had 3 beers and she went to sleep. And apparently in that room, playing video games while Stephanie slept, was Stephanie's asleep. There's Stephen, her twin, Andy, her partner, Brianna and Andy Jr.'s dad. There's Brianna. There's Andy Jr. Also came into the room was Uncle Robert, Andy's brother, and Robert's friend. So apparently at one point in that evening, there's 7 people in that room, 5 being adults. The room's tiny, okay? It's a tiny room. But they're all in the room and they're all having fun and drinking and... Okay, but at some point it said that Robert, so Andy's brother and his friend, they're gone from the room. Now, I don't know, did they leave the trailer or did they go to the other end of the trailer? There's not much said about that. But left in the room, I'm thinking Andy Jr., I'm hoping Andy Jr. was asleep. Because obviously he can't speak, so we don't know. Stephanie reckons she was asleep. So then there's just Brianna, Stephen, and Andy. Her dad and her uncle. You know, her mum's closest person to her. It's her mum's twin. She should have been safe. But they were playing video games and they got a bit bored. And so they thought, we're going to play with Brianna. So they took turns throwing this baby in the air. Do you remember I mentioned this ceiling fan? Throwing her like a football, it said, to each other and to the ceiling, letting her hit the ceiling. Oh, and by the way, slipping out their hands and hitting the floor over and over and over again. They were just torturing this little girl for fun. It was said that when she cried, they found it funny. They found it funny when she cried. They were amused by it. Okay. So when they got bored of that, well, when Andy got bored of it, he said he went to sleep about 12, 1 o'clock, and Brianna was in her swing. I didn't even see a cot in that room. I didn't see a cot. I just saw a swing. So that's where she must have been sleeping. He says he checked on Brianna at about 3 o'clock in the morning. She seemed fine. He went back to sleep. And then 7 o'clock in the morning, he woke up. Brianna was crying, so he took her out of the room, changed her, said he played with her for a little bit, put her back to sleep, and he went back to sleep. And then he got woken up at 9:45 by Stephanie, you know, and so we're back to where Stephanie reckons it all started from now. Okay. But then the police come in and advise him that his daughter's died. She's passed. She couldn't fight the injuries. And then they found out what really happened that night. So you think it's bad what he's already admitted to. But this gets so much worse. I'm just preparing you. Okay. So once he realised she'd passed and that the police weren't buying, okay, even what they explained, there was some other injuries to Brianna that they wanted answers to, and these injuries were to both her private areas, both of them, okay? And he says, right, okay, wow. And they were questioning where the bullets had come from. So they were questioning, you know, really pushing him. I've seen the transcripts, and they're not, you know, I'd love to see the interrogation, to be honest, just to see him squirm. Oh, and just to let you know, these two men were apparently only 5 foot apiece. They were little 100 and some pounds. They were just ugh. Okay. So he started admitting then. He says, well, some of the bites were from me. So he admits to biting her. He then says, well, I threw her up a couple of times. So he's admit that he was throwing her up, letting her bang her head, letting her drop on the floor, along with Stephen. So he admits that it's the two of them that have been playing with Brianna. And he says, I didn't mean to, and when he's the photos are put in front of him, he's like, oh, I didn't mean to leave a bruise like that. I've seen the pictures. These bruises aren't new. And everyone can see they're not new. And he did say, well, Stephanie does get a bit mad with us when we do it, when we play with Brianna. And then he says, okay, last night we might have been a little bit too rough with her. He said that she'd slipped out of his hands a couple of times. So, and the police said, well, what did you do when she cried? And he goes, well, just kept throwing her in the air. I've got a question, because you might be wondering, well, where was Mum? It's in the room. Remember I said very small room? Stephanie apparently slept through it all. Stephanie was in the room. And what about Andy Jr., the baby? Her brother, 18 months. Was he awake? Was he watching all of this? Do you think he'd be next? Oh my God. And then it was asked, well, what about the marks on her ears? Because there's like blood. If you see, if you do look, you will see, look, her ears are really, really red. And it said, well, yeah, Stephanie used to pinch her ears, and she used to like to pinch her. So if you thought for 1 minute this was just two males that were doing this to this little girl, oh no. Her mum wasn't just indifferent to the pain of her daughter. No, she was fully involved. She was involved in all of this. And she used to pinch her. And he said, yeah, sometimes she used to throw her into a high chair, and they'd ask, well, from how far? And Andy was like, well, you know, from kind of standing up, she'd just throw her. It's about 5 months old. And I do keep saying she was 5 months, she was 5 months, she was 5 months. This has been going on since they brought her home. And she was, he said, so was it just, you know, what was Stephanie's involvement? And he said, yeah, she was pinching her. She'd punch her. She'd bite her. She'd kick her. She'd throw her. This is her mum. So they were all involved. All three of them, all involved. There's a grandmother in that trailer, don't forget. There's a grandmother in that trailer. There's another uncle in that trailer who would have heard this. Okay, so you might think, didn't they hear her screaming? Well, they did sometimes, but Andy admits that they used to put cloth in her mouth, so no one could hear her screaming. So they then brought pictures. So they'd showed Andy these pictures of the bruises and the marks behind her ear and the bite marks all over her. And then they showed pictures of Brianna's rear private area. And it said that she was destroyed. Both areas. Okay. This child had been raped and sodomized, possibly from when she'd been brought home from the hospital. They don't know exactly when it started, but it had been going on. The damage to her, it had been going on for a while. Okay. So when he was shown the picture of a private, he actually said, you won't find any semen because I cleaned her with a wipe on my finger and I inserted it to the knuckle to clean any semen. I've read the transcripts. Okay, so we go to Stephen. Okay, so that's... Oh, and by the way, when he did that with his finger, with the wipe, the baby wipe, it was said that Brianna would have been dying at that time because he'd done that to her at 7 o'clock that morning. Do you remember I said when he said he'd woke up at 7, he went out and changed her and then put her back to sleep? That's what he was doing when he was changing her. Okay. Stephen also admits to throwing her up. That's how they refer to it. We threw her up. And then Stephen, when it's discussed about the night before, he also knows Brianna has now passed. He admits that the night before, when Andy went to sleep, okay, so Andy's asleep, Stephanie's asleep, apparently. Brianna woke up about 3 o'clock. And he said he doesn't know why he did it, but he began to sodomize her. That's what he began to do. And he says that at some point he realised what he was doing was wrong and stopped. Okay. When they asked, you see it in the transcripts, why did you stop? And he was like, I don't know why I stopped. I don't know why I started. I just realised it was wrong, so I stopped. So I don't know if Andy knew this, because Andy says he woke up about 3 o'clock, but so did Stephen. So did Andy know this had happened? And so he'd gone to clean her to get rid of the proof. I don't know. Yeah, he stopped. And when they checked Stephen's underwear, Brianna's blood was in his underwear. Absolute monsters, just monsters. Monsters. So this poor child, for the 153 days she was alive, she was kicked, she was punched, she was bit, she was pinched, thrown, she was raped. They put cloth in her mouth to stop any of the signs of her screaming. This is what she went through. And when her little body just could not take any more, then they phoned the ambulance. I think what really hit me, believe it or not, was hearing that when he used the wipe, that it said she would have been dying at that time. That was what. Oh my God. Oh, do you know? I just sometimes I just. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I genuinely don't know what to say. Right, okay. So they set the trial for September the 12th in 2003. These monsters. Now, bearing in mind, don't forget there was other people in that there was other people in that trailer. Now, New Mexico. Now, you always hear me praising America for their justice system. You always hear, I say on a lot of my stories, even if I'm doing a UK story, I always say this was America. You know, it'd be the death penalty. Well, New Mexico didn't have the death penalty. If they did, it wasn't there for these three. Okay. So they the trial went ahead. I think the only witnesses was the do you want to know? Remember I said there's one photo. There's one photo in that trailer of Brianna, just one. And the detective who was working on the case and the district attorney, I remember when I very first heard about it, he was so upset, and he said he couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. It would just upset him so much that now if you go online and look for Brianna Lopez, you'll see there's a photo of her, and she's kind of look, it looks like she's on her front, but she's kind of lying to the side like this, looking very peaceful, very sweet. The photo is after she's died, and what he did, that photo is identical to the other one that you see, where you see all the bruises. And what he did, he actually photoshopped the bruises off Brianna. He actually photoshopped it off. So it was just so he had this photo without all the damage that they've done to her. And it's a beautiful photo, and it's heartbreaking to know that this is after she's passed, that this photo is from, because she just looks like a baby sleeping. And you can see the exact identical photo with the damage on the back of her head, the front, her ears, the bite marks, just, oh, it's just heartbreaking. So then when you see the photoshopped photo, and she just looks so at peace, and it's just, he's still got that on his desk. He'd framed it, and, you know, it seems like the people who investigated and the nurses who tried to save her, they showed her more love than her own family ever did for those 153 days that she managed to live on this earth. So like I say, the trial started on September the 12th, 2003. Now, Robert and Patricia, they were found guilty of failure to report the child abuse. They were aware of it. Of course they were aware of it. She admitted she was aware of it. She just didn't know. She didn't want to get involved. It wasn't her business. That was her granddaughter. That was his niece. I mean, it was said that she had injuries that had been there for, not just that night. It's not just one night. This had been going on for months. She would have heard her screaming. She didn't do anything. Now I've heard different. I'd heard they got 60 days. 60 days. The uncle and the grandmother. I've heard elsewhere they got 5 months. I've heard elsewhere they got 30 days. So I've heard very different reports on exactly how long they did in prison for not doing anything to help this child, to protect this child, to get these demons away from her. But I don't think it matters, does it? Because 5 months, 30 days, it nothing for knowing this. Now, I don't know whether they watched it, but the trailer's this big, so they at least heard it. And they would have seen the bruises. Okay. Stephanie, mom, obviously found guilty, of course. She got 27 years. Andy, daddy, guilty. This is of child abuse and rape. 63 years. Don't think this is great yet. I'm not done. Stephen, also found guilty, child abuse and rape. Said he got 57 years. I've seen other things. He got 51 years. But Stephanie, you ready? Stephanie was supposed to be up for parole in 2021. That's bad enough. Okay, so there was a petition when it was said that, there would be a parole in the near future. There was a petition done years ago to stop these getting out of prison. And there were 60,000 signatures on this petition. Do you want to know when she was released? She was released in 2016 after doing 13 years. 13 years she did. For pinching and punching and throwing and allowing the rape and the murder of her child while she slept. She's done 13 years. And it said that for every day that you do, you get a day back. So where was the 27 years would have been bad enough. She's 13. Okay. Daddy, you ready for daddy? Now daddy and Uncle Stephen, they're still in prison. But daddy's up for parole in 2025. So of course there's petitions at the moment, out at the moment. If you If you do want to sign the petition, there's a petition going on a channel called The Disturbing Truth. It's a fantastic channel. It's very well researched, and he's got a petition going at the moment to keep him in prison. Okay. The uncle's still in prison, but I haven't heard of a parole date for him. No, but when Stephanie did go into, now Stephanie, even though she's out, it says she's living in Texas somewhere. They did see when she was released, and the press kind of got up to the car that she was in. You couldn't quite see how she looks now. But she has got a tracking device, so she has got a tracker on her. Damage is done now. Too late now. Okay. But do you want to know the real thing? When Stephanie went into prison, now you'd like to think when these three went into prison that, prison justice, we always hear about it, especially when it comes to children. Prison justice will do its job. Stephanie was a very manipulative bitch. She was. I've swore twice in this story. And it was said that it was released over the intercom throughout the wing that she was on, that no one is to touch her, or you will get a lot more added onto your sentence. Have you ever heard? I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that happening. But yeah, apparently there's a warning put out to all the other female inmates, don't touch her. Okay, but it was said that even though this warning had gone out, it seems that they didn't really care about time being added on, and she did get a couple of beatings while she was in there. Okay. Andy and Stephen, it's been said they didn't do too well while they were in there. Remember that they're quite little. Now, without being crude, I do hope they've had a little bit of what Brianna went through, or a lot of what Brianna went through done to them. But it was said that Stephanie started to win over her fellow prisoners, because what she decided to share with them was that they were actually doing drugs on that night. It wasn't alcohol, it was drugs, and that she was so drugged up because her brother and Andy had given her too much. That's why she didn't wake up. She had nothing to do with it at all. And she's a victim too. Yeah. She's a victim too. She loved her baby, and it was them that did it. That's what she said. That's part of why I wanted to do this story, because I just thought, no, I'm not seeing as many creators cover this story. I've seen a couple, over the past couple of years. Like I said, I knew about this story way back when. But as I was noticing less and less being covered, I just thought, I've got to keep this out there, and especially seeing as she's out there. Okay. The little Brianna, the family, it just keeps going. It just keeps going. The family just buried her in an unmarked grave. Just an unmarked grave. Just didn't want a name, didn't want any details down. They just wanted all this hidden. They were not hidden. They wanted it all forgotten. It's what they wanted. The extended family. I don't know whether that's Nanny, but and uncle, but yeah, they just wanted it forgotten, and the public weren't having that. When the public heard about it, there was absolute uproar over it, quite rightly so. And so the public went and started bringing teddies and toys, things that she never had while she was alive, and they, flowers, and to her unmarked grave, and they wanted to get a headstone put up, but of course it's the family, and the family was saying no. So the The cemetery themselves were saying we can't go against the family's wishes, but you know, put the stuff round. Well, the family weren't happy about that. So do you want to know what they did? They put a cage, an actual cage, over the unmarked grave with a little cherub doing this. You know them ornaments? They're like angels, and there's one doing this. It's like, shh, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. So the public, you know, not having this at all, they can still continued. And what they did is, round the cage, they put lights at Christmas, continued to bring flowers there. From around the world, this baby touched so many people. Just not her own family. Just not her own parents. And people continue to send flowers and, you know, teddy bears for her and all around. And it's been opened slowly so they can clean it and put things in there. Family not happy about that, wanted the cemetery to put a stop to that. Cemetery was like, you know, we're not going to stop that, we're just going to make sure there's no vandalism. But this isn't vandalism. So then because the family wouldn't allow her, do you know she still hasn't got a headstone? This was nearly 22 years ago this year, and she still hasn't got a headstone because they won't allow it. She got a cherub doing this. But the public, obviously, there was a fund made and they got a bench made for her. So finally, the family allowed part of a fence to be taken down for this bench to be put there in her name. So that's there. But her little grave is still covered with this cage. You know, just to make sure we forget about her. We don't want to talk about it anymore. So then there's I suppose it leaves you asking why. But why her? Why this little baby? Why her? What was their reason? And there was a thought, perhaps, that because when Brianna was born, Daddy was in prison. Andy was in prison when Brianna was born. And so there was a question, was she his? That came out after she died. It was like, but what was she his? Had she been his? Was she? And is that why they did it? And then it turns out a DNA test had been done, and she was. After all of that, she was his baby. She was. So was that why they all turned against her? Because they didn't believe she was part of the family? They beat and battered and raped and sodomized and kicked and stamped and threw this newborn to 5 months old because they didn't know if she belonged to him. But she was. Final poke in the eye from Brianna. Now, as you've seen, the sentences they were given was despicable. Given the fact that Mum's already out, Dad can be out soon, Uncle will be out soon. So there was a law changed back in 2005 called Brianna's Law, and it's to change the law on child abuse. The maximum that could be given at that time was 18 years. That was changed in 2005 the judges could give a life sentence if they felt the need to, because the judges' hands were tied. And this would cover children 0 to 11. Then in 2018, Brianna's law was amended so it covers children from 0 to 18. Okay, so it covers all the way up to adulthood. Yeah. So that's Brianna's law that they brought into place after this, and also to bring in harsher sentences, obviously, for people who are aware that child abuse is going on, even if they haven't taken part, but stricter sentences for those people as well. Because like I say, I heard that the nan and the uncle, I heard 5 months, I've heard 30 days, I've heard 60 days, but it was still less than that baby lived. It's just absolutely heartbreaking, devastating story, and it was one that I don't know. I don't know how I've told it. I don't know. I hope I've done her justice by doing this story and keeping her name out there. It's just, do you know, I've never got upset on my stories ever. But it's just, it's alright. It's alright. It's just horrible. Just a horrible world when you've got people like that in it. Vile. So now you see why I said it's one of the worst stories I've ever done. 153 days. That's all they gave her. 153 days. And I think if I'd have heard that it happened on that night, that was bad enough. But to know that, given the age of the injuries and the bruises and everything on her, this had been going on practically from when she was born, from when she came home. Said that she wouldn't have known love. She wouldn't have known what love was like. She was just abused from the second she was born. Horrible story, but it was the baby Brianna Lopez story. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for staying. I was half expecting everyone to go. It's just thank you. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Tiff. Yeah, just, I haven't been looking at the comments as they've been going. I'm sorry, if I haven't. Yeah, God, Hayley's still here. Everyone's still here. I've genuinely thought, God, they're all going to drop out because it's just horrific. It's just horrible story, and a horrible. It just to know there's people out there like that, and you know, I've done over 100 stories. I've done, and thank you, Ariane. You know, I've done some real disgusting stories, but this one, yeah, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. How do I pronounce your name? Is it Sana? Are you from that group on the book face? Sani. Oh, beautiful name. Beautiful. Thank you, Warwick. Thank you. Yeah, just tonight I really don't know how to end this one. I genuinely don't. Just horrific. It's just some monsters. I've been asked to do look into a couple today. There is Garnet Spears. I've been asked to look into that one. Phil mentioned one last week. I can't think of the name. Phil, would you mind messaging after the story once it gets posted, and to give me the name that you mentioned last week? Kelly's still here too. I'm good to say. Oh, thank you. Yes, it is. It is. Hi. I wasn't sure. Yes, you're from my group. I don't actually tell people about the group because they, yeah, I think it might set them over. Oh, hi, Natalie. Thank you. Oh, yes, I will. I will look at Garnet Spears because what is it with these parents? Why are they having children? I don't understand. Why? All right.